Hey YouTube, it's Dimitri, and today we're going to talk about internships. A lot of you have been asking as we're getting into internship season, but I'm going to dive into the comparison of kind of the differences of applying for an intern versus applying for a job. The vast majority of the details are exactly the same, and so I'm going to link videos below to other videos that I have related to applying for jobs, and then you can use those to kind of leverage the information to apply for your internships. So first off, the main difference between an internship and a full-time job realistically is just the fact that there are a lot of full-time jobs upon graduation, and there are next to none internships. So I'm saying this because getting a full-time job is very challenging and difficult. It's hard to get a good job, it's very competitive. The same holds true on internships, except for the fact that a lot of companies do not do internships. So if you had, say, 100 companies all hiring, and then when you look at internships, maybe 3 of those are hiring. So it's kind of hard to get an internship because there's just not a lot of opportunities in really good companies. And even in like general sense, there's just not a lot of internships, even in bad companies or not very relevant companies. It's just hard to get internships, which is kind of the first takeaway you should take from this video. The second part here is kind of the process. So it's really not that complicated. You apply for the internship typically online, or you try to network with somebody and then apply for an internship with a recommendation or like a reference. And then they look at your resume, they make a decision if they want to interview you or not. I believe there's typically just 1 interview, maybe 2 at the most, but it's a lot shorter than a full-time job, which might have 3 or 4 interviews. So it's just 1 interview on average. You do the interview and then you would either get the offer or not get the offer. And I just want to kind of throw a caveat on here. Like, a lot of people have reached out to me and said, hey Dimitri, can you recommend me for, this internship at your company? I have recommended a bunch of people, and I'm just gonna let you know, none. 0 people have ever been hired through my recommendations. The reason being, to be honest with you, is that most of this goes through HR's process and procedures, and they're the ones that do the first kind of combing through. I don't know HR, I don't work with HR, they don't really care who I am. It might look better, I guess, if you know somebody at the company, but to be honest, I don't think it really makes a difference. That being said, the resume part is like the first step. The crucial part on a resume, I think, which a lot of people miss, especially students, companies are hiring for a very specific job. So when you have 1 page, your resume should only be 1 page. When you have 1 page and you list out like 100 skills, like, oh, Python, R, Java, time series, general statistics, right, logistic, OLS, and you're listing off all these different things in corporate finance and accounting, and you have all these skills, right? And you think, I look really, really good on paper. I have all these skills. So you apply and literally no one will call you back. The reason being is when we're hiring, right, I'm hiring for this position. I want an expert in this area. I don't care that you're great on all these other areas. I don't care that you have this stellar background. I really want someone who's focused and can do the job for the 3-month or 6-month period or whatever for the internship. So I'm looking for someone that's very focused. So when you write your resume, write a resume focused to that area. So if you're applying for quantitative research positions, write your resume towards the research and quantitative side. If you're applying for trading positions, which is completely different, you should write the resume focused on trading and finance, equity markets, fixed income, whatever they're hiring for. Try to really highlight those skills, those class projects, and that experience in that area. So I'm gonna throw a link below to a few videos I've done on resumes, resume tips, 5 biggest mistakes on resumes, stuff like that below. And we're gonna dive in here to the interview portion. So the interview portion, I think, is something hard to actually hit. If you're interviewing somewhere that's I don't know, I'd consider them a quant firm, like 2 Sigma, Citadel, a lot of trading companies, they're gonna really focus on these brain teaser types of questions. I kind of huff here, I just don't like them. I think it's a stupid idea. I don't think it really adds any insider value. But if you want to do good on these technical interviews, really you just need to buy a book. And I'll put a few links below to books that a lot of my classmates have had. People I've known have actually read these books, and I had these exact questions from these books on the interviews at these quant firms. I think the biggest part of an interview, though, at least from what I've seen, is that you need to be somewhat charismatic and fun and exciting, right? They're gonna have to work with you for 3, 4 months, 6 months, whatever. People wanna work with people that are either smart and exciting and nice and friendly and easy to get along with. Nobody wants someone that's brilliant, but is just I don't know, super quiet, reserved. I know this is hard to kind of convey in an interview, But one thing is, if you have a phone interview, is when you're talking on the phone, try to remember to smile. I know they're not going to see you, but when you smile, it actually makes your voice kind of add like an inflection and kind of like a higher pitch, to like you're excited and you're thrilled to be on this call and you really want this job. But just focus on the interview. And again, tips for interviewing just quickly are, don't list some things off. Like if they ask you a question like, can you give me an example of using an OLS model? Just give them an example. Don't go off and be like, oh, I can do OLS and I can do new US correction, and I've done logistic and I've done time series, and I see this all the time. Like a lot of you are probably like, well, of course, why would I give them extra information? But there's a lot of quants specifically that are kind of the know-it-all quants. And so they try to list out all these details and all this information. A really good interview is not one person grilling another person. Interviews go well when it's a conversation. So I'm asking you like a question like, hey, give me an example of doing an OLS model. And then you give me some example from your class project, since you wrote OLS on your resume. And you explain the project a little bit, and it's quick and brief. I did this project modeling weather over X amount of time. We used OLS because, we didn't have these serial correlation issues, but it's really fun to build, and this is what we looked at. And then I'm gonna come back and say, okay, well, you did an OLS model. Did you do this type of test? Did you do that type of test? And you're gonna say, oh yeah, we looked at these tests, and we did this, we did that. Like it should be this back and forth. I should ask you a short question. You should give me an answer with a little bit of detail, not super wordy, but not like yes or no. And then on the same time, I want to ask a question back to you. This should be a conversation of me asking, you providing details. And then the number one kind of seal the deal thing, and I've seen this everywhere, tech firms, finance, corporate finance, manufacturing, literally anywhere and everywhere, consulting, they want you to ask questions at the end of their interview every single time. I know this is kind of annoying, frustrating sometimes because you feel like you already know everything about the job. But even asking something personal like, hey, can you tell me your experience, working with this company? Or, I see that you worked at these 4 companies. Can you tell me what the culture is like at this company compared to past companies you've worked at, right? Try to extract some information about the company from their perspective. This makes them feel valued and important. It also gives you some insight into the corporation of how they see it. And it kind of gives you an inside view, and not like the website that's pretty and says oh, we're amazing and stellar and we're the best quants in the world kind of attitude. But again, asking the question at the end, some people use that as a deal breaker. So even if it's a fairly well interview, they'll use that you didn't ask the questions at the end. I don't know, I just don't think they're interested, and then they'll just toss you. So anyways, that's kind of my tips for doing the internship process here is, A, you need to look online. I know this is gonna be terrible. It takes a long time. Reach out to alumni though, see if their companies have internships, or just find a list of alumni on LinkedIn, and then go through and just search their companies, see if they have internships. And then again, the 2 main steps here is just the resume and the interview. If you can nail those, you're gonna get a lot of interviews, you're gonna pass the interviews, and you should have options. But I don't wanna undermine this and say oh, it's easy, because I did not have an internship. I was actually working almost full-time during grad school and undergrad, so for me it wasn't crucial. But at the end of the day, I would have loved to have an internship. It just didn't happen. They are very, very hard to get, and I don't wanna undermine the fact that it's not an easy process. But again, just putting in that work, refining the resume, and practicing the interviewing. So again, practice with your friends. It'll help you immensely land an interview, either the internship, or if not, at least in the job stage. So anyways, those are my tips for the internship. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And as always, until next time.